man is standing outside his own house screaming. Inside are the bodies of his children. The woman responsible is above him, on a platform, untouchable, and she is watching him grieve with the calm of someone who has already decided that this is exactly what needed to happen. He calls her a monster. She doesn't disagree. But here's the thing. By the time you reach this moment, if you've watched from the beginning, if you've followed the whole story, you understand her. Not excuse her, understand her. You know what she gave up for this man. Her family, her country, her name. You know what he took from her when he left. You know that she had no legal recourse, nowhere to go, nothing left except her own formidable intelligence and a fury that had been building for a long time. Euripides wrote this play in 431 BC. It was booed at the premiere. It has never stopped being performed since, because he refused to give the audience what they wanted, which was a monster. What he gave them instead was a relatable person. And that, it turns out, is much harder to sit with. This is Medea. Let's start from the beginning. Every Greek tragedy arrives in the middle of something. The backstory matters always, and in Medea's case it matters enormously, because the play is, among other things, about what happens when a story's heroine becomes the wrong story's villain. Medea is a princess of Colchis. Colchis is at the far eastern edge of the known Greek world, modern Georgia roughly, which in ancient terms might as well have been the moon. It's barbarian territory. Foreign, strange. Medea is the granddaughter of Helios, the sun god, and the niece of Circe. Yes, that Circe, the one who turns men into pigs in the Odyssey. She is, in other words, not a figure to be trifled with. She's also, by the time the play begins, a woman living in Corinth, in a house with 2 children, and a husband who has just told her the marriage is over. How does she get there? Blame Jason, her husband. You'll have heard of the story of the Argonauts, when Jason is sent on an impossible quest by his uncle Peleus, who wants him dead and assumes the quest will manage it. He has to sail to Colchis and retrieve the Golden Fleece, a magical ram's fleece hung in a sacred grove and guarded by a dragon that never sleeps. It's not the kind of errand you'd normally expect to go well. But Jason arrives in Colchis, and Medea sees him, and Aphrodite, or Eros, the accounts vary, ensure that she falls in love with him immediately. And Medea is a sorceress of considerable power, so rather than watching him fail and die, which is what would have otherwise have happened, she helps him. She gives him magical ointment to make him invulnerable to the fire-breathing bulls he has to fight. She tells him how to deal with the army of warriors that spring from dragons' teeth sewn into the earth. She drugs the dragon guarding the fleece. She betrays her father, the king of Colchis, who has raised and trusted her. She commits, in other words, a profound act of treachery against her own family and her own people. And she does it for Jason. And then, fleeing by ship, with the Argonauts and the stolen fleece, when her father's navy is catching up to them, she goes further still. She kills her own brother, and scatters his body in pieces in the water so that her father will have to slow down to collect the remains. This is an appalling thing to do. Even Medea doesn't pretend otherwise, but she does it. She does it for Jason, because she loves him and she has committed herself entirely, and she has no way back. This is all important background, not because it makes what follows inevitable, but because it establishes the terms. Medea is not naive, she is not innocent. She has done terrible things before this play begins. They get back to Greece. There are years of wandering. Medea's magic is useful again when they reach Iolcos, where she orchestrates the death of King Peleus in a particularly ingenious way, convincing his daughters that she can restore youth by boiling old people in a cauldron with the right herbs. She can, the daughters cannot. They try it on their father and kill him as she knew they would, which gets Jason and Medea exiled from Iolcos. They settle in Corinth. They have children, 2 sons, and for a while, by all accounts, this works. Medea is a foreigner and a woman, and consequently has very little formal status, but she has Jason, and Jason has the heroic reputation and the Greek passport, so to speak, and together they make a life. The thing about Jason is that he isn't a villain in the way that tragedies usually give you villains. He isn't scheming or sadistic. He's something more banal, and in some ways more maddening than that. He's a man who has always been the hero of his own story, and who is quite good at convincing himself that whatever he wants to do is also the reasonable thing to do. When he abandons Medea, he has a complete justification ready. He doesn't hesitate. The king of Corinth, Creon, has a daughter, Glauce in some versions, sometimes called Creusa, and she's available, and the match would give Jason security and status and a future that doesn't depend on a foreign wife with a complicated past. So he takes it. He tells Medea the marriage is ending. He offers her, with extraordinary condescension, the observation that she should be grateful for everything he's done for her, that he's given her the opportunity to live in a civilized country, that his new marriage actually benefits their children, because they'll have half-siblings of good Corinthian standing. Euripides gives him this speech, and he means every word of it. Jason is not lying when he delivers his justifications. He believes them. He has, through some sophisticated feat of self-regard, arrived at a position where abandoning the woman who saved his life and betrayed her family and murdered her brother for him is actually the sensible and morally reasonable thing to do. Medea, who is listening to all of this, says almost nothing in response. The play begins before we see Medea at all. We hear her. She's inside the house. We hear her grief, which is physical, animal, the grief of someone whose understanding of the world has just collapsed. The nurse, her nurse, the woman who raised her, is outside with the children and she is terrified. Terrified specifically because she knows Medea and knows that this grief will not stay grief. The nurse's opening monologue is one of the greatest opening monologues in theatre. She wishes, she says, that the Argo had never sailed, that the pines had never been cut from the mountains to build it, that the whole expedition had never happened. Which is, if you think about it, an astonishing scope for a wish. She's wishing she could undo the entire adventure that the audience knows as one of the great myths of Greek heroism, the Golden Fleece, the Argonauts, all of that. She'd swap the lot to have Medea not be in pain in that house right now. That's the first signal Euripides sends us about where the sympathies of this play lie. The chorus arrives, a group of Corinthian women, neighbours essentially, and they've heard Medea's cries and they're concerned. They ask the nurse what's happening. The nurse explains, and then Medea herself comes out and speaks. What she says, the argument she makes to the chorus, is a feminist analysis of marriage in ancient Greece that's so precise and so clear-eyed that it still startles today. She talks about what it means to be a woman sold in marriage to a stranger. To have to work out immediately whether this person will be kind or cruel, because you have no real alternative either way. To be utterly dependent on the goodwill of someone you barely know. And then she adds, and this is where it gets personal, that she has none of the ordinary consolations, no nearby family, no home to return to. She gave all of that up. She is entirely, structurally alone. The chorus are on her side immediately. The women of Corinth listen to this speech and they think she's right, which, and it's worth emphasising this, is a genuinely radical thing for a 5th century Athenian playwright to do. The women are right, and the Greek hero is wrong, and the audience is being invited to see it clearly. Creon arrives. He's not a subtle character, Creon. He's come to banish Medea and her children from Corinth. Today, immediately, because he's afraid of her. He says so directly. She's clever, he says. She knows dark arts. He doesn't want her near his daughter. Medea, in the conversation that follows, does something interesting. She doesn't rage, she doesn't threaten. She performs with considerable skill the role of a non-threatening, humbled woman who simply asks for a little time to make arrangements, to find somewhere to go, to prepare her children. One more day, she says, just one more day. Creon agrees, and the moment he leaves, Medea drops the performance entirely and tells the chorus what she's actually doing. She needed the day. The day is enough. She's going to use it. At this point, she's furious and purposeful, and she doesn't yet have a plan. Or rather, she has the direction of a plan without the specifics. She knows she wants Jason and Creon's daughter to suffer. What she doesn't know yet is quite how. Then Jason comes. The scene between Jason and Medea is one of the greatest arguments in all of drama. Not because it's violent or hysterical, but because it's a complete encounter between two people who see the same events entirely differently, and Euripides makes both versions comprehensible while making absolutely clear which one is right. Jason's position, stated plainly, he is being practical. He's securing a future for his family. His new marriage is a political reality, not a romantic one. He doesn't even really love Glauce. He implies it's simply strategic. Medea should understand this. He's not abandoning her, he's still providing for her. He's being reasonable. Medea's position, stated with considerably more force, he would be dead without her. He would have died in Colchis, died 12 times over, and she saved him each time. She gave up her home, her family. She killed her own brother. She destroyed her reputation. She made herself stateless and dependent. All of this for him. And now, when she has nothing left to give and nowhere to go, he's discarding her for a more convenient wife and dressing it up as good sense. She asks him at one point, where would he like her to go? This is not rhetorical. She genuinely wants to know the answer, and he doesn't have one. Jason leaves, and Medea begins to work. What she decides to do arrives in stages, and that's important. Euripides doesn't present us with a Medea who has always known she would do what she does. She works it out. She thinks it through. The plan evolves. First, she will kill Glauce, the new bride. She will send her children with gifts, a beautiful dress and a golden crown, and the gifts will be poisoned. This is within Medea's power, and she executes it with care. She prepares the gifts herself. Second, she will kill Creon, because Creon is the obstacle, because there's no point killing Glauce without removing the man who ordered her exile. Third, and this is where the play becomes something else entirely, she will kill her own children, her 2 sons. If she leaves, the children stay in Corinth, and enemies will take revenge on them. She knows how this works. She knows what happens to the children of a woman who's made enemies. If she takes them, they'll live as exiles, and a life like hers, stateless, dependent, vulnerable, is not the life she wants for them. And there's a third thing, the thing she is most honest about to herself. She will not leave Jason with the thing he loves most. She will not let him win. If he is going to destroy her life, she will destroy his. She says all of this out loud to the chorus. She doesn't try to dress it up. But then, Euripides does the thing that makes this play a masterpiece rather than merely a brilliant revenge drama. He gives Medea doubt. After the plan is settled, after she knows what she's going to do, she looks at her children, and she goes back and forth. The monologue is one of the most extraordinary pieces of writing in human history. It moves in real time through a mind in the act of destroying itself. She holds their hands. She looks at their faces. She thinks about their breath, their skin, the way they smile at her. She thinks about what it would mean to watch them grow up. She almost stops. She decides she can't do it. She changes her mind again. She talks herself back into it. She talks herself back out. And at the centre of it all is something that Euripides puts in plain language. She knows it's wrong. She knows it. She says that she understands what she's about to do is evil, but that passion is stronger than reason. The word she uses is Thumos, a Greek concept of spiritedness, rage, the hot part of the self. And Thumos, she says, is stronger than her planning. She sends the children to the palace with the gifts. The children don't know what the gifts are. The audience, by this point, cannot watch the children without knowing what's coming, which is precisely the point. The gifts work. A messenger arrives, and he describes what has happened to Glauci with the dress, the golden crown, what it does to Creon when he tries to help his daughter and touches the poison himself. Medea goes inside the house. The chorus stands outside and listens. They cannot stop her. They talk about whether to stop her. They decide they cannot. There are cries from inside, the children's voices calling to each other, calling for help, and then silence. Jason arrives, running, because he's heard what's happened at the palace and he's terrified for his children. Too late. He knows by the time he gets there what's happened. Medea appears above the house, like a god. She's up there with the bodies of her children and a chariot drawn by dragons. Because she is, and always has been, the granddaughter of the sun god, the rules don't apply to her in quite the way they apply to other people. Jason stands below and howls. He wants her dead. He wants to grieve. He wants for it not to be true. He asks to bury his children. She says no. She's taking them with her. She's going to Athens, where the king Aegeus has already promised her sanctuary. She secured that earlier. Another piece of the planning. She's been several moves ahead throughout. He calls her a lioness. He says she has the nature of Scylla, the sea monster. She doesn't argue with the descriptions exactly. She says, call it what you like, it hurts you, and that's what matters. And then she goes. Euripides was apparently booed at the premiere, which should tell you something about how confrontational this play was felt to be in 431 BC by the audience watching it. Because what he's done is take the revenge plot, which is a familiar structure, and refuse it the satisfaction that revenge plots usually deliver. We don't feel good at the end. We don't feel that justice has been served. We feel wretched and disturbed, and somehow implicated because we've spent the whole play understanding Medea's position and then watching her do something unforgivable. One more thing worth knowing, because it changes the picture slightly. Before Euripides wrote his version of the Medea myth, the tradition was different. In the older stories, the children were killed by Corinthians. They were killed as revenge, or by accident. The idea that Medea kills her own children was, by most accounts, Euripides' invention. Why? Partly because it makes the tragedy absolute. There's no coming back from it, no comfort, no consolation. But also, I think, because it puts the question to the audience in the starkest possible terms. If the Corinthians kill the children, then Medea is a victim of further violence, and the play becomes, even with all its complexity, a more comfortable shape. A woman wronged, wronged again, sad but legible. But if Medea does it herself, then we have to do the harder work. We have to hold simultaneously the understanding of how she got here, and the full undiminished horror of what she's done. And 2,500 years later, we're still performing it, because the story Euripides wrote is the one that turned out to be true. Thanks for watching this video. Remember to like and subscribe to the Literary Buffet for the 5-minute summary and the 45-minute sleep story version of Euripides Medea, and 20-minute versions of other classic literary tales.